Welcome to this special investigative report. Tonight we confront a difficult but necessary question. Are we hiding prostitution? If so, why? And more importantly, who benefits? Let's examine the data. In 2010, law enforcement agencies in the U.S. made approximately 43,000 arrests for prostitution and commercialized vice. By 2019, this number had dropped to around 19,811. In 2020, arrests fell even further to 16,770. A sharp decline, almost too sharp. Is this a result of progressive legal reforms, shifting law enforcement priorities, or something more sinister? Has the sex trade simply gone digital, making it harder to track? Or have policies deliberately turned a blind eye to certain sectors of the industry? Former officer, VO. It's not that prostitution stopped, it just moved. Online platforms made it easier to hide, and in some cases there's been pressure from higher-ups to deprioritize enforcement. When you stop enforcing the law in one place, it doesn't mean the crime disappears, it just moves where people aren't looking. We know the system isn't designed to protect victims. The Epstein-Maxwell case exposed how deep and organized sex trafficking can be. Yet, despite Epstein's highly publicized death and Maxwell's conviction, one glaring question remains. Why have no other high-profile individuals been prosecuted? Why does justice seem selective? Could it be that those in power are ensuring that the real networks remain untouched? If law enforcement truly aim to dismantle trafficking rings, shouldn't the focus be on the enablers, not just the victims? Instead, we see a system that punishes individuals on the lower rungs, while the power brokers operate untouched. Once upon a time, prostitution was confined to street corners and secretive brothels. Now, social media has transformed the game. Advertisements for sugar babies and exclusive content flood platforms, normalizing a modern-day sex trade under the guise of empowerment. The terminology has changed, but has the industry? Are we witnessing empowerment or just a new form of exploitation? Former escort, VO. I was told I was in control, but when someone else is setting the rules, when an algorithm decides your worth, when followers dictate your income, you start to realize you're just a product. Another major shift. The criminal focus has always been on the sellers, not the buyers. But let's ask the real question. Who enables this industry to thrive? Who keeps the demand alive? Historically, women in prostitution faced criminal records while their clients walked free. But what if we flipped the script? Would cracking down on buyers dismantle the system? If other nations have proven that targeting demand reduces exploitation, why hasn't the United States adopted this model? This isn't about morality, it's about power, it's about control, and it's about asking the right questions. If we're arresting fewer people for prostitution, does that mean the crime is disappearing, or just being ignored? If human trafficking networks exist, why are so few prosecuted? If social media is normalizing a new form of exploitation, what are we doing to stop it? This has been a special investigative report from the Donkey's Voice. Stay informed, stay vigilant. Prostitution used to exist in the shadows, on street corners, in secretive brothels. Today it's happening in broad daylight, on platforms millions of people use every day. The sex trade hasn't disappeared, it's evolved. And now, it's being marketed as empowerment. But who really profits? The terminology has changed: escort, sugar baby, content creator. But has the industry itself? Is this liberation or just a repackaging of the same system? Former OnlyFans creator? I was told I was in control. I believed that at first. But then you realize your income depends on engagement. And engagement rewards more extreme content. Before you know it, you're not in control at all. A staggering reality. While OnlyFans boasts billion-dollar revenues, most creators make little to nothing. Meanwhile, the platform itself, just like the old brothels and street pimps, rakes in the real money. The question remains, are we witnessing a new form of digital self-trafficking? And if so, why is it being encouraged? We used to arrest women for selling sex on the streets. Now, we celebrate them when they do it online. What changed? Did society become more progressive? Or did we just find a new way to profit off of exploitation? Hotels and motels have long been hotspots for prostitution and human trafficking. But despite repeated crackdowns, the problem persists. Why? The truth is, Many hotel and motel owners turn a blind eye, as long as the money keeps flowing. And even when police crack down, enforcement is inconsistent. Who really faces consequences? While trafficking victims face charges or remain trapped in the system, hotel owners often escape accountability. But should they? Imagine a world where hotels and motels faced real consequences for enabling prostitution. What if establishments caught harboring illegal activity lost their business licenses, or were forced to pay massive fines? Would stricter policies force hotels to finally take action, or would they continue to claim ignorance? Las Vegas is often associated with legalized prostitution, but here's the reality: prostitution is illegal in Las Vegas. Contrary to popular belief, prostitution is only legal in certain rural counties in Nevada, not in Las Vegas, Reno, or any major city. Yet, the misconception persists because escort services, illicit massage parlors, and underground sex work thrive in Vegas hotels, often under the watchful eye of management. So why is Vegas still a hotspot for sex work? Simple. The city profits from the illusion of legality. It sells the fantasy, without taking responsibility for the reality. Are we allowing the same thing to happen everywhere else? Here's the contradiction. If you meet someone in a hotel and exchange money for sex, it's a crime. But if you send explicit content over a digital platform like OnlyFans and get paid, it's business. Why? Because it's behind a paywall? If prostitution is illegal, shouldn't all forms of paid sexual transactions fall under the same laws? Or are we just repackaging the same system under a modern digital-friendly name? This is what we mean by a half-cleaned room. We police street prostitution and sex work in low-income areas, but we ignore the same transactions happening online, in luxury hotels, or under the guise of high-end escorting. Instead of dismantling the entire system, we selectively sweep away the parts that are easy to clean, leaving the rest untouched. Take the case of Ghislaine Maxwell. Her arrest made headlines, but was she the exception or the norm? Thousands of other traffickers operate in the shadows, protected by legal gray areas, selective enforcement, and a lack of corporate accountability. If the system truly cared about stopping trafficking, we wouldn't see just one high-profile takedown every decade. We'd see the industry itself dismantled. Welcome to this special report. Today we expose the contradictions, loopholes, and selective enforcement surrounding prostitution, trafficking, and the digital sex economy. Prostitution-related arrests in the U.S. have dropped significantly, from 43,000 in 2010 to fewer than 17,000 in 2020. Meanwhile, human trafficking prosecutions have doubled, raising key questions. Have we shifted our focus, or are we allowing a more sophisticated, unchecked system to thrive? In a physical hotel room, exchanging money for sex is illegal. But if that same transaction happens online, through a platform like OnlyFans or an escort website, it's labeled as business. Why is digital prostitution not treated the same as street-level prostitution? The law remains clear: you cannot sell sex. But if it's behind a paywall and labeled as content, suddenly, it's legal? Verification on these platforms is weak, allowing underage users and trafficked victims to be exploited under the guise of consent. The question is, are we actually regulating prostitution, or are we just making it more convenient for traffickers? Law enforcement cracks down on street prostitution, but ignores high-end escort services, luxury hotel operations, and digital sex platforms. Las Vegas, a city built on tourism, openly facilitates a John's culture, with legal brothels just outside city limits. Yet statistics show that prostitution-related arrests remain surprisingly low. The reality? The industry isn't disappearing, it's just operating in places where the law conveniently looks away. If we're serious about stopping trafficking, why aren't hotels and motels held accountable? A new penalty system could fine establishments where prostitution repeatedly occurs, cutting off the supply chain that allows trafficking to thrive. The Epstein-Maxwell scandal was high profile, but it was an exception, not the rule. Thousands of traffickers operate every day, protected by legal loopholes, financial influence, and selective enforcement. If our justice system truly prioritized stopping trafficking, why do we only see high-profile arrests every few years while the broader industry remains untouched? This is what we mean by a half-cleaned room. We shut down street-level prostitution while ignoring digital platforms, high-end escort services, and corporate complicity. We prosecute low-level offenders while turning a blind eye to the bigger networks pulling the strings. We need real reform, not just band-aid solutions. If we want to combat exploitation, we must hold every part of the system accountable. From digital platforms to hotels, from small-time traffickers to high-profile enablers. Selective enforcement only fuels the problem. It's time to clean the whole room, not just the parts we're comfortable addressing. This has been a special report from your channel name. Stay informed, stay vigilant.